Part 27. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 263. Mu Yangling put a thick quilt on the carriage, patted it, turned around and shouted, "Mother, are you all right?" "Okay, okay." Shu Wanyang came out with a bundle and put it on the car. Mu Yangling groaned, "Mom, we're only going for a few days, we don't need to bring so many things. These are the clothes of Bosi and Kijia, they must be brought, well, go and take them out quickly." Bosi and Kijia, dressed in round clothes, were sitting side by side on the kong with their calves hanging down. When they saw their sister coming in, they stretched out their arms together to hug her. Bowen put on shoes for them, and stretched out his arms to hug Bosi, but Bosi was already strong, and because he wore a lot of clothes in winter, Bowen slid down when he picked him up. Mu Yangling took Bosi from him, hugged Kijia again, and said, "Okay, go call Ziyuheng and the others." When Chi Heiran brought people over on horseback, Mu Yangling and the others had just packed up, and all the leather goods were put on a donkey cart at the back. Shu Wanyang and the others sat in the carriage, because the tea was still hot in the corner, so they didn't feel cold. Mu Yangling closed the gate, asked the Sun family to help him look at the house, then jumped onto Heijun, waved to everyone, "Okay, let's go." The coachman raised his whip immediately, and Chi Heiran rode beside Mu Yangling. Seeing that she couldn't stop looking back, he said, "Don't worry, I've already told you to go and look at the rabbit shed for you. Soldiers will visit your house from time to time, that is 5 or 6 days, what are you worried about? You think they are all like you? My family has a big business. Don't you worry if all the family members go out at once." Mu Yangling looked up at the sky and said, "It seems that the weather is not bad, we should be able to arrive before dark Hanshong Mansion, right? Should be no problem." Because of the high wind and low temperature in winter, Mu Yangling and the others didn't talk much while riding on horseback. They surrounded their necks and mouths and stopped by the roadside for lunch at noon. Bosi and Kijia went out for the first time, their big eyes widened, their chubby bodies moved carefully in the open space, not to mention the two children, Bowen and Ziyuheng Ziyulan were also very excited, although everywhere they looked it was a bare tree, and they were running around excitedly. Auntie put the lumps of big bone soup that had been boiled a few days ago into the pot and increased the heat, and a pot of fragrant big bone soup would be ready in a while. She beckoned to Fei Bai and the others, "Go and get a bowl, people drink a bowl of hot big bone soup to drive away the cold, and there is a lot of ginger in it." Fei Bai squatted in front of him, swallowed his saliva, and responded cheerfully, ran to the donkey cart and dug for a long time to find the bowl bag. My aunt put another large pot of soup under it, and the noodles were also needed yesterday, and she said, "That's the child, Aling, who is so particular. If you want me to say, just add some dry food on the way. I have to bring all these things, isn't this a waste of time?" Shu Wanyang, Aling is considering that Bosi and Kijia are too young to eat pancakes. Anyway, we can arrive before dark. Grandma, what are you worried about? I think it's good. We can still play on the road. Ziyuheng bumped into her sister, what do you think? Ziyulan nodded repeatedly, I like it too. The road is bare, what's the fun? Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran dragged 2 sticks of firewood over, and said, "If you want to see the scenery, we'll come back when everything recovers in spring." Chi Heiran said that in spring, the roads are full of small wildflowers. Quite good looking. Don't, the aunt said, even if you want to come out to play, you have to wait until after the fields are planted. Ziyuheng stuck out her tongue at Mu Yangling, shrugged her shoulders, and said that next year is probably out of the question. A group of people arrived at Hanshong Mansion at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but the number of pedestrians on the street did not decrease at all, and the carriage went directly to Chi Heiran's mansion. Ziyuheng and Ziyulan directly rolled up the curtain of the carriage, and looked out of the window together with Bowen. Shu Wanyang wanted to say that this was unruly, but considering that they are now a peasant family, and there are no such so-called everyone's rules, the words are easy to speak. Swallowed again. It was also the first time for my aunt to see such a bustling place. She stared outside and exclaimed, "This Hanshong mansion is bigger than Xingzhou mansion." Xu Wanyang nodded, "Besides Jingzhou mansion in the north, Hanshong mansion is the largest. Naturally, the degree of prosperity is not comparable to that of Xingzhou mansion." It was also the first time for Mu Yangling to visit such a lively street. "The last time I came to Hanshong mansion was too hasty, so I didn't look carefully. At this time, I looked around with interest. I think the people in Hanshong mansion are better than the last time I came. There will be more time." "That's natural," Chi Heiran said. The Hanshong mansion was recovered, and businessmen from all over the Great Zhou began to come. In addition to the big temple fair the day after tomorrow, there will naturally be many more people than last time. "By the way, where is my father?" Mu Yangling asked. "Didn't you say that you would let my father take leave as soon as we came?" "I have already asked someone to call him in advance, and he will probably arrive soon after you pack up." Chi Heiran's mansion is in Zikan, where officials of Hanshong mansion and celebrities in the mansion mainly live. The house is 5 in and 5 out, and it has 2 small gardens. Chi Heiran robbed this house. Chi Heiran was the first to invade the Hanshong mansion with his troops, and after occupying the mansion, this was the second place he wanted to occupy, because all the dignitaries and officials of the Jin kingdom stationed in Hanshong mansion lived in this area, and the money they looted was not only the money in the yamen. The government treasury occupies the most here. At that time, Fei Bai kept an eye out, and directly occupied this house for Chi Heiran. At that time, he was handling military affairs in this house, and Chi Ziyuan also lived here when he came. Anyway, after the house was taken back, it was either empty or sold cheaply to the gentry and celebrities of Hanshong mansion, so it was better for him to live in it. So Chi Heiran asked someone to write a Chi mansion plaque and hang it on it. It was considered his home in Hanshong mansion. Because others rarely live here, most of them are Fanzijin, and because most of the time there is only 1 or 2 masters, so there are not many servants. As soon as Chi Heiran and the others arrived at the door, the housekeeper brought someone to meet him at the bottom of the steps. Standing on the steps, Fan Zijin came down when he saw Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling dismounting, nodded slightly to Mu Yangling, and then went to the carriage with a smile to greet Xu Wanyang and Malayashi. He is very respectful to Xu Wanyang and Malayashi, although his attitude towards Mu Yangling is still not affectionate. Xu Wanyang liked this bookish child very much. When she saw him coming, she smiled and asked Bowen to study hard with him. Mu Yangling didn't want his younger brother to imitate Fan Zijin's temper, so he immediately stepped forward and said with a smile, "Mother, let's go in first." Heiran said that father may arrive soon. Xu Wanyang said angrily, "You're a real kid. I've said it a few times. Heiran and Zijin are older than you, so they should be called elder brothers." Yes, brother Heiran, brother Zijin, let's go in quickly. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 264. When Chi Heiran heard Mu Yangling's call, he leaned close to her. "It's the first time I heard you call me brother, let me hear you call me 2 more times." Fan Zijin snorted disdainfully. Mu Yangling pushed Chi Heiran's head away and went into the mansion. The buildings in the Chi mansion are rich and grand. Mu Yangling couldn't help but be speechless when he saw the furnishings in the house. He took down a bronze Buddha on the multi-treasure stand and looked at it, and asked, "It's all antiques, right? You are really rich." "It's all left by the predecessors," Chi Heiran said indifferently. "It's not a golden Buddha, so what's the use if you can't exchange it for money? If you like it, take it away, there are still many in the warehouse. You should keep it by yourself. When the world is peaceful in the future, there are many good things here that cannot be bought with money, and it will become the foundation for your descendants. Mu Yangling put the things away, returning to the original place. Looking around, he said, last time I only stayed here for 2 nights, and I came and went in a hurry, and I didn't have time to visit your house. This time, I have to take a good look. Fan Zijan, you should go and pack your things first, and I'll take you to see it after dinner. Okay, let's talk first. Seeing that Mu Yangling had left, Fan Zijan turned around and asked Chi Heiran, is there something else on your mind when you invited her here? It was a fight, but she refused. Chi Heiran said regretfully, this time I can only go to the temple fair. It's a good thing she didn't agree. Let me tell you, Heiran, the situation between Jingguo and Zixia is tense now, and the war may expand. We'd better stay still and recharge our batteries at this time. Why didn't I know about this? Chi Heiran stared. I also only received the news in the afternoon. I got the news from the merchants of the Kingdom of Jin. I haven't had time to tell you, and my eldest cousin Fan Zijan has now launched a campaign between the 3 kingdoms with the support of Chi Ziyuan and Chi Heiran. Smuggling activities. Chi Heiran leaned over to Fan Zijan's side, and said with a smile, Zijan, lend me some money and see if there are any treasured knives for sale at the temple fair. I'll buy one later. Fan Zijan knew that Chi Heiran was out of money again, so he looked at Chi Heiran strangely and said, where did your money go? Not to mention what my cousin gave you, I also give you 100 taels a month. It wasn't enough to pay for those people when we were in Linen Mansion. Why is it not enough for you to stay in the barracks all day now? Chi Heiran scratched his head. Actually, I don't know where all my money has been spent. Later, I will ask Fei Bai to bring you the account. You can take a look. Give me some money now. Fan Zijan went back to the house and gave him 100 taels, thinking that the temple fair was very big, and he was going to play with Mu Yangling and the others. He was afraid that if he wanted to buy something expensive, he would not be able to spend enough money in front of Mu Yangling. Losing face, I added another 100 taels to him. If it's not enough, you can ask Fei Bai to find me in the restaurant, or ask someone to keep the account, and settle the account at the end of the month. Chi Heiran packed up the silver ingot and threw it to Fei Bai. He was overjoyed, patted his chest and said, I'll pay you back when I earn money. Fan Zijan waved his hand. He had heard these words since he was a child, and he would say these words since Chi Heiran was able to spend money. The only time he received money back from him was to get more money from him go buy a precious sword from the western regions. Fei Bai happily went out with the money in his arms, and when he returned to the house, he sent Fan Zijan Chi Heiran's account book. Fei Bai remembers that Chi Heiran takes Fei Bai with him wherever he goes, and when he spends money, the money is all given out from Fei Bai, so he wrote down everything, including the money for the meals he ate in the Hongguolo. I also wrote it down. Fan Zijan didn't intend to check the accounts at first, but when he saw the account book, he casually flipped through it. He couldn't help frowning, and pointed to the account book and asked Fei Bai, why is your master's pocket money and military supplies still linked together? When the master was in the barracks, he ate and lived with the soldiers. Seeing that everyone was training hard, he gave them extra meals. The military expenses are limited, so the master can only pay for it himself. Fan Zijan closed the ledger and handed it to Fei Bai. Chi Heiran said, you will make trouble for them. What will happen if you don't listen to orders? Don't listen to Fei Bai's nonsense. Do you think I'm so stupid? It's not just giving them extra meals. Only when their training or tasks exceed my expectations, or they have made great achievements, I will reward them with private money. Only then did Fan Zijan feel relieved, but he was still worried about Chi Heiran's purse. In this way, no matter how much pocket money you have, it won't be enough. Fan Zijan was about to tell him to buy some property for him in Mingshui County, so that he could earn a living in the future, and when he needed money, he wouldn't have to ask him and his eldest cousin to use it. When he looked up, he saw Fei Bai looking at him in fear. He swallowed the words that came to his lips, and only after Chi-Heiran went to wash up did he recruit Fei-Bai to ask questions. Why were you sweating just now? Still looking at me like that? Fei-Bai bowed and said, Young Master Biao, I know that you love my master. Just now I was afraid that you said you would give him more money, or give him property or something. Why are you afraid of this? Seeing Fei-Bai peeking at him, he dropped the teacup in his hand on the table and asked, I'm asking you something. Fei-Bai immediately knelt down on the ground, and said, Young Master Biao, you know how master is, he spends money generously and spends money without counting. He has 50 taels in his hand. He can spend 100 taels. Now master has 10 taels a month. The monthly money is 50 taels, and there are 20 taels from the eldest son, and 100 taels from you, but every month when you do the settlement, you can always owe 40 or 50 taels outside, you have to take the next month's money to make up for it. If you give him more money, he will only owe more. If you give the master property, then. Fei looked at Fan Zijian eagerly, and his meaning was self-evident. For the money Chi-Heiran spent, he would only owe more. The master is still a child when it comes to spending money, and he doesn't know how to save money at all. As Chi-Heiran's personal servant, he not only has to take care of him, but also guides him, otherwise the master's mistakes will be punished by him in the end carrying it. If others don't say it, only the eldest son can't spare him. Although the master didn't spend a lot of money, the bills he owed outside were all based on his monthly allowance. For example, when the money was low in the past, he only owed about 20 taels outside at most. It will definitely not exceed 1/3 of his monthly pocket money. Sometimes Fei-Bai wondered if the master had done the math. Fan Zijian grew up with him, wiped his ass and paid off countless debts for him, so he naturally knew his talent, stroked his forehead with a headache, and waved, Okay, I will got it. After a pause, he continued, I won't raise his pocket money. Fei-Bai heaved a sigh of relief, bowed and retreated. Chi-Heiran didn't know that during the time he took a bath, he lost a property that could generate pocket money. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 265. Mushi hurried, and finally arrived at the Qi mansion before dark. He glanced at his wife with piercing eyes, picked up the twins, and made them scream with his stubble. Seeing that the two children were about to cry, he handed them over to Mu Yangling. He waved his hand and said, Okay, take your brothers and sisters out. All of a sudden, only the husband and wife were left in the room. Mu Yangling carried the twins back to his house, took out a string of money from the bag and opened them, and said, I will give you the money, and if you see something you like on the street tomorrow, you can buy it yourself. If you don't have enough money, you can buy it yourself. I called over. It is said to be shopping, but in fact their main task tomorrow is to sell fur goods, but their family is old and young, and it is impossible for everyone to stand in front of the stall. So after pushing the car to Fangxi and occupying a good place, Mu Yangling waved and pushed Mu Shi and the others out. Go and play, Ziyuheng and I can just watch over here. My aunt was a little tired from the journey yesterday, so she didn't come today. Ziyulen looked at her sister and cousin anxiously. Mu Yangling asked her to hold hands with Bowen, and said, Don't let go, Dad, just look at them. All right, let's go play, you are also in the way here. Mu Shi knew that his daughter had an idea, so he hugged the twins and took his wife and the others to go shopping. The temple fair will only start tomorrow and will last for 3 days, but today it is already very lively, with many merchants coming and going, and even hawkers gathering. Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng untied the rope on the cart. Ziyuheng didn't feel stage fright at all. She climbed onto the cart and grabbed a piece of fox fur and shouted, For goods, good for goods, fox fur, "Rabbit, there are all kinds of skins, everyone, come and take a look." Zai Hung's voice was clear and loud, and everyone who heard it couldn't help but glance in this direction. Seeing a little girl who could stand on the car and yell by herself, the merchants from the south couldn't help but click their tongues, thinking that the Northland was really enough. It's open, at least in the south. Little girls and daughter-in-laws don't have the guts, and girls from rich families have to wear a veiled hat when they go out. The merchants from the north smiled knowingly, glanced at their fur goods, and decided to take a further look inside. Wu Lai stood on the tea house and looked down, facing Mu Yangling and the others' trolley, not only seeing the two of them clearly, but also the goods on their trolley. Seeing a lot of wolf skins on the cart, he couldn't help squinting his eyes slightly, and said, "I didn't expect the Han people to become more and more tough, and they can even beat wolves." Fourth son, it's because the Han's Hong mansion was once ruled by our country, and the people learned these hunting skills. Going further south, the people of Dezhou are still as weak and incompetent as before. Pai Duzi, who followed Wu Lai, lurked over, said. Wu Lai didn't believe it. The kingdom of Jin hadn't acquired Dezhou for 100 years. Although the people of this country were cowardly and incompetent, they had their own resilience. This was why he was always cautious about Dezhou's wars. And the Han's Hong mansion, which was occupied by them long ago, was taken away by the western camp of the Great Zhou. Qi Ziyuan made the people in the city warmly welcome them. Cautious. He pointed to Mu Yangling's stall below and said, "Go, buy all kinds of leather goods." Pai Du was puzzled. "Fourth son, our Dakin's leather goods are many times better than theirs, why should we buy theirs?" Wooly glanced at him coldly. Pijasi's heart skipped a beat, and he knelt down on one knee and said, "Your subordinate should be damned, if you ask something you shouldn't ask. Go ahead and buy some of everything." Pai Duzi turned around, left the box and went downstairs. Zai Hung was tired from shouting, and she happened to be resting on the cart, while Mu Yangling was sitting on a stool looking around, when a thunderous voice rang in her ears, "Girl, how do you sell these leather goods?" Immediately, Zai Hung became emotional, hugging a piece of fox fur and said, "I don't know what kind you are talking about. We have fox fur, rabbit skin, and wolf fur here. We also have 2 high-quality solid color fox fur here." As she spoke, Zai Hung took out a bundle from the fur goods and opened it, and 2 fiery red fox furs appeared in front of her eyes. This was brought back by Mu Shi. When he was out on a mission, he met a family of foxes, and he hunted 2 of them, as well as several wolf skins. Although he didn't mention the danger of the mission, he wanted to come to the mission of meeting wolves. It won't be easy either. Pai Duzi just glanced at it and lost interest. Although fiery red fox fur is rare, the 4th prince is not short of it. Are there any fur goods in the storeroom? He had no intention of wasting it for the 4th prince, so he randomly chose a fox fur, a wolf fur and a rabbit fur, and asked, "How much are these?" Zai Hung blinked at him. "What's the use of buying only one of each item?" Only then did Mu Yangling look away from other places, and after looking at Pai Duzi, he stepped forward with a smile and said, "Guest officer, the total is 72,328 cash, you don't want to choose anything else? Aside from other things, a piece of rabbit skin can't do much, why don't you buy a few more?" "Stop talking nonsense, wrap it up for me quickly," Pai Duzi said in a tigerish voice. Seeing him yelling at people, Zai Hung frowned in dissatisfaction, but Mu Yangling smiled respectfully. "Wait a minute, I'll tie you up right away." She pulled out a hemp rope, tied the fox fur and the rabbit skin was rolled up and placed in the wolf skin, and 3 pieces were rolled up together, tied with a rope, and handed up with both hands respectfully. Pijasi took the things, and then took out the money and handed it to Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling accidentally touched his palm twice, but Pijasi didn't take it seriously because Mu Yangling had a look of fear on his face. Zai Hung sensed something was wrong, and stood quietly watching. Mu Yangling kept watching Pijasi go upstairs and felt that someone was looking at her. She didn't dare to look up at the window of the tea house opposite, but just wiped her forehead and wiped away the non-existent cold sweat, then turned her head and said to Ziyuheng, "That person just now was scary." Ziyuheng looked at her cousin with embarrassment. That person was a bit stronger, but not as tall as her cousin. She really didn't understand what was so scary. But Mu Yangling just patted her head and said nothing. His lowered eyes flashed in thought. He was wearing black official leather boots, the knife on his waist was a Hu style, and the totem of Karl, a tribe of the kingdom of Jin, was tattooed on the scabbard, with a thick callus holding a knife in his hand. Although he speaks Chinese very well, there are still Hu Yin. It is not surprising that there are Hu people in Hanzhong Prefecture, because it was once occupied by the Jin state. After the Jin soldiers retreated, not all the Hu people left here. Some married Han women and stayed here, and some did not want to move and settle here. Zhou did not drive away. But there are very few people pretending to be Han people who are obviously Hu people. What's more, the clothes of the other party are not ordinary, and the thick callus on the knife in his hand makes Mu Yangling more vigilant. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 266. Wooly flipped the 3 skins and said, "It's well tanned, similar to the skins tanned by our hunters." Wooly threw the things aside, not in a good mood. "We occupied the land of Dazhu and ruled the Han people, but we didn't learn their farming and weaving. We still have to buy a lot of grain from Dazhu every year, but their people have learned our hunting methods. I have learned the recipes and methods. My father Khan can't listen to the advice, and the leaders of the tribes are also short-sighted. If we followed what I said after taking down Jingzhou Mansion and Hanzhong Mansion, our people might also learn the advanced Han people's methods. Cultivation techniques, such fertile land is used by them for enclosure and grazing." Pitsy lowered his head in shame. Wooly sighed, and when he walked to the window, he found that there were 2 more teenagers at the booth. Both of them were dressed in rich clothes, with servants and guards behind them. Wooly wanted to look away, but seeing that the 2 of them had a happy conversation with one of the little girls who sold fur goods, they couldn't help but take a few more glances. Wooly pointed at them and asked Pai Tuzi, "Who are those 2? Pai Tuzi was in charge of the intelligence work in Xingzhou Prefecture of Hanzhong Prefecture, so he walked to the window and only glanced at it and said, "Fourth young master, those are Qi Ziyuan's younger brother Qi Heiran and his cousin Fan Zijin. Qi Heiran, who was the first to open the gate of Hanzhong Mansion." "Yes." Wu Lai narrowed his eyes slightly. "You don't seem very old. Let's go down and have a look." "No, fourth young master, although this Qi Heiran is an idiot, his skills are excellent. You can occupy Qinghe town without disturbing anyone, and even stormed into the heavily guarded Hanzhong Mansion. Do you think it's an idiot? I think this word is more suitable for you." Wooly turned and went down. Pai Tuzi blushed, and quickly chased after him with his guards. Mu Yangling was facing the window of the tea house, and asked Qi Heiran with a smile in a low voice, "You said that such a lively temple fair, will there be friends from the neighboring congress?" Qi Heiran didn't move his eyebrows and eyes, and said as a matter of course there will be. What's wrong? He can let people lurk into Jin Kingdom and Xixia, and of course the 2 countries can also. It's nothing, I just think that person is probably near us." Mu Yangling's eyes kept observing the surroundings, and saw that Wu Lai came out of the tea house with a group of people behind him, walking directly towards them, and Pai Tuzi, who made himself suspicious, was among them, and said with a smile, "Maybe the new guest still wants to meet you, make friends with you or something." Thinking of the plot in the costume drama, Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I just don't know if you 2 will come to cherish each other." Fan Zijin looked at Qi Heiran seriously for a while, then turned to Mu Yangling and said, "This possibility is very high." Qi Heiran was so angry that he jumped, "You 2 joined forces to scold me." Mu Yangling and Fan Zijin looked at Qi Heiran seriously and said, Where did we scold you? Chi Heiran looked at them suspiciously. Then what do you mean by what you said just now? Before Mu Yangling could answer, Wu Lai and the others walked over. Mu Yangling closed his mouth, smiled and picked up the package containing the fiery red fox fur and stuffed it directly into Chi Heiran's arms, and said with a smile, "Little General, these 2 fox furs are my gift to you, and we need you to take care of our family's business in the future." Chi Heiran stared at her in a daze, and didn't react for a while, but Fan Zijian picked up 2 pieces of pure white rabbit skin with his fingers and threw them to her, saying, "Wrap them up and use them as scarves." Mu Yangling tied it up with a rope immediately, and said with a respectful smile, "Mr. Fan, just take it if it looks like it. If it's not enough, I'll look for it if there is any solid color." Seeing the opportunity, Wu Lai interjected, "It's not hard to find pure white rabbit fur, but it's not easy to get a lot of it." He glanced at Fan Zijian's face and said with a smile, "This young man is handsome, and he uses white rabbit fur. The scarf is nice, but gray isn't bad either." Chi Heiran still had a tacit understanding with them, and he immediately understood when he saw this, looked Wu Lai up and down, and asked, "You are familiar with these things? I think you are a barbarian with your clothes, right?" In fact, Wu Lai is a barbarian because he looks like a barbarian, but the guards behind him are all dressed as Han Chinese, and many of them look like Han Chinese. Seeing that Wu Lai finally talked, he smiled and said, "My mother is from a barbarian, and my surname is Wu. I don't know the names of the 2 young masters. I heard the servant said that the temple fair in Han's Hong Mansion is very lively, so I came over to have fun." When Mu Yangling saw that they had struck up a conversation, the corners of Mu Yangling's mouth twitched slightly, but Ziyuheng, who was determined to sell her things, pointed to a group of merchants in front of her and whispered, "Cousin, they have come out." Mu Yangling turned his head to look. The group of merchants were the merchants who had seen their leather goods before and walked all the way to compare them. Now that they came out, Mu Yangling observed their expressions, and seeing that they didn't have much joy on their faces, he knew that the business was sure. When she failed, she winked at Ziyuheng. Ziyuheng immediately climbed onto the cart, grabbed a piece of wolf skin, waved it and shouted loudly, "For goods, high quality fur goods, fox fur, wolf skin, rabbit skin, there are all kinds of colors, don't bother passing by, miss." The sudden voice startled Wu Lai and Fan Zijian, who were talking, and they looked up at Ziyuheng speechlessly. Chi Heiran smiled and winked at Mu Yangling, then cupped his hands at Wu Lai and said, "Young Master Wu, we might as well find a place to sit down and talk. Brother Fan and I hit it off right away, and that's exactly what I thought. Just now, my people booked a box in the tea house. Why don't we go sit there?" The group went back to the tea house, and the remaining Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng successfully attracted the attention of the group of merchants. They quickly surrounded Mu Yangling's cart, and Mu Yangling greeted them with a smile on his face, "Bosses, take a look, let us know if you like it, and I'll wrap it up for you." The leather goods were opened by Mu Yangling and the others and spread out on the cart. A boss looked at them, shook his head and said, "It's good, but it's too little. Boss, this is just a part. I don't have many fox and wolf furs, but I have a lot of rabbit furs. I don't know which one the boss is looking for. Do you have a lot of rabbit fur? Southerners prefer fox fur and rabbit fur, but fox fur is expensive, and it is even rarer if it is pure color, but few people have large quantities of fox fur. At this time, rabbit fur is the most popular." They came to buy fur goods, and the most they bought was rabbit fur. Mu Yangling can go into the mountains to hunt rabbits almost every day, and sometimes he has to skin the rabbits before selling them, because people don't know how to skin them, let alone tanning them, and skinned rabbits are cheaper than unpeeled rabbits, and saved them a lot of trouble. The Mu family naturally has a lot of inventory. In addition to the rabbit disaster in the spring of this year, she also saved a lot of rabbit skins, so there are especially many rabbit skins this year. Mu Yangling turned around and took out a large bundle from under the felt, put it on the cart, patted and said, "Look, these are all rabbit skins, and there are 3 more bundles underneath." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 267. The eyes of the merchants brightened, and they asked, "Can you open it for us to see?" "No problem." Mu Yangling gave Ziyuheng a wink. Ziyuheng hurriedly stepped forward to untie the rope. Mu Yangling turned around and took out another bundle, patted and said, "Our rabbit skins are well tanned. I dare not say that it is the best in the world, but I dare say that our family is the first in this Hanshong mansion. If you don't believe me, touch it. Isn't it very soft? There is no dirt on it." Ziyuheng took out a piece of pure white rabbit skin, rubbed it again and again, and said with a smile, "The craft of tanning skin is passed down from our family. This kind of rabbit skin can be made into clothes and scarves without much treatment." Several merchants looked at each other, and took a piece of paper to look carefully in their hands. "Is there another bundle? Little girl, why don't you take it out and show us together?" Mu Yangling smiled and said, "This last bundle is different from these, and the price is also different. Aren't they all rabbit skins? What's the difference?" Mu Yangling came back to his senses and lifted the felt, and took out the last bundle. Everyone's eyes were glued to it and they couldn't get it off. The top 3 colors, pure white, pure gray, and pure black, were rolled up separately and bundled up. The 3 colors are clearly distinct. Compared with the other mixed rabbit skins on the cart, it is decisive. Moved up more than 1 notch. Mu Yangling patted the bundle of rabbit skins and said, "These rabbit skins are the best ones specially selected by my family, and they are more carefully tanned. If you don't believe me, take a look and see if the skins of this bundle of rabbit skins are softer." Mu Yangling took out a few sheets for them to check, and several bosses touched them in exchange, and found that it was true, and one of them muttered, "You are so big and rolled together, no one knows what's going on inside." "Don't worry, boss, when you bought it by the number of sheets, and you will definitely have to take them apart when the time comes. You take them one by one. If it's not good, you just take it out, and we will accept the punishment." Ziyuheng smiled. Said, "Our family never deceives others, and our family will hang around here in the future, but we dare not do things that destroy the city wall." Mu Yangling found that Ziyuheng was more eloquent than her, so she slowly gave her the initiative, and just stood behind her as her backing. Several merchants were very satisfied with Mu Yangling's fur goods. They were all fellow villagers and came here together, so they discussed it and decided to swallow all of Mu Yangling's fur goods together. They saw that there were only 2 little girls looking at the stall, but they didn't dare to underestimate them. Everyone said so much before, not to mention the clever girl, and the little girl who stood behind and looked at them with a smile was not easy to provoke. They have traveled around a lot, and they judge people more accurately than others. The girl looked at them like a torch, and the Ziyuheng girl was smiling, but she was neither humble nor overbearing, so everyone discussed it and said, "Little girl, your leather goods are really good, so we plan to buy them all. You see, we got them all in one go, so you should pay less at this price, right?" Ziyuheng looked at Mu Yangling, and Mu Yangling nodded encouragingly at her. Ziyuheng thought of what her cousin said, that in the future the business of the rabbit shed at home would be handed over to her, and even the account books would be taken care of by her. Courageously, holding the corner of his clothes tightly, he said, "Well, there are only a few pieces of fox and wolf skins, so the price cannot be reduced. Fox skins cost 4 or 2, wolf skins cost 3 or 4, and rabbit skins cost me 2 or 4. Originally, I planned to sell 16 coins apiece, but now I will give you 1 less penny, which is common, and those specially made ones are 18 coins apiece, which cannot be less. What do you think? It's still too expensive. We bought a lot of it, and we wrapped it up for you all at once. The rabbit skins at other stalls are not so expensive. The best ones are only 15 yuan a piece, and the average ones are 12 or 30. When can buy it? Ziyuheng insisted on her own point of view, and said, but our quality is far better than others. If you don't believe me, compare it. The best 15 yuan coins from other people's houses are definitely not as good as the ones on our cart. Lowering the price to 15 cents is not bad. No, it's too expensive. How about this? If you are willing, we won't lose any of the 13 coins on the cart. We want them all. How about the special 15 coins? Yes, little girl, we are together. If you want, we can make it up. If you don't want to, we don't want any of it. Ziyuheng's face was a little red, and her fingers pinching the corners of her clothes gradually became more and more forceful. Mu Yangling smiled and said, bosses, your asking price will make us lose a lot if we sell it loosely. There are still many people in Shiliuan come to buy. This temple fair will be busy for 5 days if it is going to be lively. You have suppressed the price so hard all of a sudden. We have more than 2,400 pieces of rabbit skins, and one piece of rabbit skins will cost you 3 pennies less. How much do you see in total? Ziyuheng nodded again and again. Yes, the big deal is that my cousin and I have to work hard for a few more days. This is more than 7 taels of silver, and a farmer only earns this much in a year. Mu Yangling hurriedly laughed and said, you guys are laughing, my family has little land, and I only earn so much for a year's harvest after taxes, but the bosses are different. I heard that your accent is from Linen Prefecture. I don't know how much money I can make as long as I ship these things back and resell them. I heard that a piece of miscellaneous fur rabbit skin in Linen Prefecture could sell for 50 yuan 2 years ago. Up to now, the quality of my fur goods is at least as good as can it sell for 60 yuan? Not to mention that I still have 632 pieces of specially made rabbit skins with pure colors. Several businessmen raised their eyebrows and asked in surprise, little girl, have you ever been to Linen Mansion? This is a complete joke. How old is Mu Yangling? How could she have been to Linen Mansion? Even if she told the merchants, they would not believe her. Of course, Mu Yangling would not say that he had been there, but said, I haven't been there, but I know 2 friends who only came to Linen Mansion. They said that the game here is cheap, and the fur goods are even cheaper. Let's talk about this fox fur. In our place it can only be sold for 4 or 5 taels at most, but it can be sold for 20 taels in Linen Mansion. If the color is better, 4 or 50 taels is not a problem. Several merchants laughed, and said, yes, these fur goods in Linen Mansion are indeed expensive, but the prices there are also high. Little girl, don't feel distressed just looking at the price of these things. You know, we travel from south to north. There is no small risk to pay. I know, I heard that there are many bandits along the road, and there are checkpoints set up by the government, plus the money paid to the bodyguard bureau. It is indeed a lot of risk to take. Seeing that Mu Yangling actually understood, several merchants liked her even more, and took the opportunity to vent their bitterness. Who knew that Mu Yangling continued, but the bosses are taking big risks and big profits. This trip will last for 3 years. We don't have to worry about food and drink, and we have to pay a lot of risks when we go hunting in the mountains. Many hunters can't get out after entering the mountains. We also risked our lives to get these fur goods, plus the medicinal materials needed for tanning. And other materials and labor. Our price is already very low. Several merchants realized that Mu Yangling was waiting here, so a new round of bargaining continued, and finally the 2 parties reached an agreement. Ordinary rabbit skin 14.5, special rabbit skin 17, fox fur, and they didn't bargain for the wolf fur. Although Mu Yangling's price was slightly higher than others, her skin was well tanned and the fur was intact, so it was worth the price. Several merchants calculated together. Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng could do mental calculations. Mu Yangling could do all 4 things at once, and Ziyuheng could just keep an eye on the remaining merchant, not afraid of them intentionally missing calculations. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 268. After counting the quantity and confirming the total price, several merchants got together to discuss the quantity they wanted, and then they took out the money on the spot. The rabbit fur was sold for 38 taels, 3 cents, and 48 cash, plus the fox fur, and the total price of the wolf skin was 66 taels and 23 cash, and Mu Yangling just wiped off the change, only 66 taels. Both the silver and the goods are paid, and the merchants directly divided the fur goods at her place. Someone asked Mu Yangling, "Little girl, I think your fur goods are good. Do you know anyone else whose fur goods are similar? Just a little worse nothing. They are fur merchants, and they mainly sell fur goods when they come to the north." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "There are a lot of fur goods in the Northland, but they are all scattered. If the owners don't mind the trouble, if you don't have enough fur goods after the temple fair in Hanshong Mansion, you can go to Xingzhou Mansion to have a look." Xingzhou Mansion. Several merchants looked at each other and asked, "Is the little girl from Xingzhou Mansion?" Mu Yangling nodded, and the eyes of several merchants lit up, and asked, "The little girl knows that there is a family in Xingzhou Prefecture that makes diced rabbit meat very well. Your family has so many rabbit skins, did you sell the rabbit meat to them?" "You mean the diced rabbit meat from Quanwaji?" Mu Yangling didn't expect that the businessman from the south would ask her about it. Fan Zijian's diced rabbit meat business has only been in business for half a year, and he has already been able to attract people here up. "It's the diced rabbit meat from Quanwaji, does the girl know?" several merchants asked excitedly. Mu Yangling smiled slightly and said, "Yes, the workshop is in our area. Do you want to buy diced rabbit meat? Aren't you fur traders? Business, of course you can do what you want to make money. The little girl doesn't know, this diced rabbit meat is very famous in our linen mansion and several nearby provincial capitals. Many people like to eat it, but it's a pity. Apart from knowing that it is those who come out of Xingzhou Mansion don't know where to get the goods, and we can earn very little if we get the goods from shopkeeper Chen." Mu Yangling frowned. Although she didn't know much about the workshop, she had heard Fan Zijian order Steward Chen to promote more diced rabbit meat several times, and try to let the people from the south come up to buy the meat themselves, so that they could cut down a lot process. Mu Yangling's expression changed only for a moment, and he quickly restrained his emotions and asked, "This diced rabbit meat from Quanwaji has only been out for more than half a year, and it's so easy to sell. My little girl doesn't know. Our south is not like your north. There are many forests and meat. The snacks, the meat is the one you have in Xingzhou Prefecture Quanwaji, and the others are some desserts and dried fruits. And this diced rabbit meat has all kinds of flavors, sweet and spicy, and the meat is also full of flavor. Although it is a bit expensive, people with a bit of wealth can usually buy some. Isn't it the Chinese New Year? Who doesn't buy New Year's goods for the New Year? We are still carrying it at this time, not because we all want to buy leather goods. If we can buy Quanwaji's diced rabbit meat, this leather goods will be a step back." The other merchants nodded one after another, and said, "Now we don't have enough diced rabbit meat for consumption, and the supply is too small." The leading merchant took out 2 taels of silver and stuffed it in Mu Yangling's hand, and asked in a low voice, "I heard what the little girl said just now, do you know the person in Quanwaji?" Mu Yangling couldn't help laughing. Ziyuheng became excited, and wanted to proudly tell them that Quanwaji had her cousin's share, but Mu Yangling glanced at her, and her excitement was slightly suppressed. Mu Yangling took the money and said with a smile, "I know people from Quanwaji, and I also know that they have accumulated 2 batches of diced rabbit meat and are planning to ship them to the south after a while. If you want to join them it will be faster to go online, but the owner of Quanwaji has a big appetite. If you make small troubles, he may not want to divert them. It means that if they want to make this deal, they may have to buy a lot, and the other party may even ask them to make a round. After all, if one sheep is chased, two sheep are also chased. The merchants looked at each other and felt that the pressure was great. The price of the diced rabbit meat is not low, but those who can leave their hometowns and run businesses are those who dare to fight, so they said, "Little girl, can you help us connect?" Mu Yangling nodded. "It just so happens that the owner of Quanwaji is also here. I'll ask him first, but how should I inform you?" Several people's eyes lit up, and they said excitedly, "We live in the Ping'an Inn not far away. My surname is Zhao. I don't know what the girl's name is. My surname is Mu, and I belong to Zhao Dong's family. When I get the news, I will send someone to invite you. Then let's thank Miss Mu here first." At this time, Fan Zijin was also discussing business with Wu Lai, but what they were talking about was the business of silk and satin. Chi Heiran sat drinking tea, glanced at the person Wu Lai brought, and asked, "Mr. Wu, where did you enter Hanshong Mansion? I remember that the border has been closed." Wu Lai's body froze, his attendant also put his hand on the handle of the knife, and the guard on Chi Heiran's side also stared at them, and the atmosphere became stiff for a moment. Fan Zijin looked around, then suddenly smiled and said, "Forgive me, Mr. Wu, my cousin is in charge of the army, so he has a bit of an upright temper." "Oh," Wu Lai held the teacup in his hand, and looked at Fan Zijin jokingly, "Mr. Fan, do you mean that you are smooth? I'm a businessman, and I only talk about business. As long as there is enough profit, I don't mind if the other party is from Jin Kingdom, Xixia, or Dazhu." Wu Lai burst out laughing when he heard the words. His gaze met Chi Heiran's like lightning, but he spoke to Fan Zijin, "I'm afraid little General Chi doesn't think so." Chi Heiran snorted coldly, turned his head away. Fan Zijin patted his hand, and said to Wu Lai, "Don't worry, Mr. Wu, my cousin listens to me, not to mention I have his share in this business, as long as you obey my Dejo's laws, and he will still open this convenient door for you." Wu Lai saw Chi Heiran reluctantly turning the teacup in his hand, but he didn't object. He glanced at Pai Duzi, and they removed their hands from the handle of the knife. "Don't worry, Mr. Fan and General Chi, I'm also a businessman. Ever since the border markets were cut off between the two countries, the price of silk and satin tea in the kingdom of Jin has remained high. I heard that there are many merchants from the south coming to the temple fair in Hanshong Mansion this time. I just took the risk to try it out. I didn't expect to be able to strengthen Mr. Fan and General Chi. The so-called people don't fight with officials, let alone me as an ordinary businessman, so you two don't worry. In Dazhu, I will definitely abide by the law." This is a joke to Chi Heiran. The smugglers are still saying here that they must abide by the law. However, thinking that he would often smuggle to the kingdom of Jin and Xixia to inquire about some news, and there was a smuggler sitting beside him, he stopped talking. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 269. When the alarm was lifted, Wu Lai and Fan Zijin negotiated a deal again, and they seemed to have become friends with the two of them. Wu Lai asked with a smile, "I don't know how little General Chi learned that I am not from Xinyuan Mansion, but from Xinyuan Mansion people from Jingzhou Prefecture." Hearing this, Chi Heiran looked him up and down, and asked, "When did I say you were from Jingzhou Mansion? I thought you were from the kingdom of Jin." Wu Lai laughed loudly, "You are right in saying that. I am from the kingdom of Jin, and I live in the Jingzhou Mansion, but there are many people like me who moved from the kingdom of Jin in the Xinyuan Mansion. How did little General Chi know about me? Did it come across the border? The Jin people in Xinyuan Mansion will not hold a totem engraved with the great Karl tribe. Only then did Yuli know where their biggest exposure point was. The sword is the life of their warriors, just like the horse. They will change everything in their life, but their horse and the sword they are used to will not be replaced at will. Unfortunately, most of the guards he chose this time are from the mother clan Cal tribe. Wu Lai laughed, clapped his hands and said, "Little General Qi is very observant, I admire you." He glanced at the sky outside, and said with a smile, "If it wasn't for my time, I would definitely have a drink with the two of you." Yuli expressed regretfully that he still had something to do and was about to leave. Fan Zijin only stayed there for a while, and sent the person to the door of the box. Wu Lai and Fan Zijin Qi Heiran cupped their hands and led the person away. Before they walked out of their sight, Wu Lai whispered to Pai Tuzi, "Get ready, we're leaving now." Fourth son. Since Qi Heiran can see the totem on our saber, he must have guessed that we are not ordinary businessmen. People who can afford this level of saber are not ordinary people, let alone his guards. Qi Heiran is not stupid, since he recognized the totem, he must have thought of this, what if he took action to keep him? Although Wu Lai is brave and ambitious, he also knows that a gentleman cannot stand under a dangerous wall, and the most urgent task is to leave Hanshong Mansion as soon as possible. Seeing Wu Lai and the others leave in a hurry, Fan Zijin turned his head and asked Qi Heiran, "Are we too scared?" Qi Heiran was at a loss. "When did I scare him? You purposely ordered their totems. Didn't you scare them?" With the level of the totems on their scabbards, this Mr. Wu must be a big man in the kingdom of Jin, at least the son of a tribal leader or the legitimate son of a high-ranking official. Qi Heiran jumped, "Then how can we let them leave? I'll ask someone to chase them." Fan Zijin grabbed him and said in a low voice, "Don't mess around, our main task now is to recuperate and recuperate." "Did you forget that you killed the prince?" he asked again. "You don't know their totem level? Then you mention this, what are you doing?" He thought that Qi Heiran finally had a sympathetic heart with him, and he cooperated properly without winking to scare him away. "I just want to know where he is from the kingdom of Jin. I only recognize the totem. Do their totems have levels?" Fan Zijin. So there was absolutely no need for Yuli to run away in a hurry. "Now that people have escaped, what about your business?" Fan Zijin smiled and said, "He found that we didn't go after us, so he naturally thought that we were not suspicious. Didn't he come to Hanshong Mansion with all his efforts to get some useful news? Is there any better news channel than contacting us?" Fan Zijin tapped Qi Heiran's chest, and said, "We are young, so we are the best to deceive." Qi Heiran looked at him suspiciously. "Why do you have to do business with him? Although I don't know his specific identity, it seems that he is quite powerful, and it is much more profitable to cooperate with him than to make small troubles now. Moreover, he can get news from us, and we can naturally get some news from him. And since we are young, it is understandable that some of the news we got was false. It means that they can transmit wrong information through this portrait of Jingguo." Qi Heiran's eyes sparkled. "This is a good idea." As Fan Zijin said, Wu Lai, who fled back to Jingzhou Mansion, found that no one was chasing him. He immediately suspected that Fan Zijin and Qi Heiran didn't recognize the level of the totem. A good way, immediately sent a confidant to sneak across the border to Hanshong Mansion to find Fan Zijin, and ask him to honor the previously signed deal. As a matter of course, Fan Zijin pulled out the prepared silk and satin, and settled the money and goods with them. Both parties were very satisfied with this, and agreed to cooperate again next time. This time, the other party took the route given by Fan Zijin and returned directly to Jingzhou Mansion from the place guarded by Qi Heiran. The fourth Prince Wooly laughed happily. "It's only 8,000 taels of silver, but it's still too tender to let them open the border gate for us. Fourth Prince, my subordinates have inquired in Hanshong Mansion. It is said that Qi Heiran is short of money and is planning to build a horse farm, so it costs a lot of money, and Qi Ziyuan has no money to give him at all. A racecourse can't be built with tens of thousands of taels of silver. How dare you make such a move without 200,000 or 300,000 taels? This Qi Heiran is quite courageous." Pai Tuzi laughed and said, "Fourth Prince, Qi Heiran doesn't have that courage. He just wants to build a horse farm with 300 or 400 horses." Wooly was stunned. is that also called a race course? The kingdom of Jinn is a nation of horses, and all the people are soldiers. Almost every household has horses. Uli himself has 2 horse farms, and each horse farm has no less than 10,000 horses. Every year, he relies on these horses and Big Joe, trade with Zixia or with the army of his country to make money. He couldn't imagine what it would be like to have a horse farm with only 300 or 400 horses. Pai Tuzi proudly said, "How can the Zhou dynasty compare with my Dajin?" Wu Lai gave a non-committal laugh, stroking the silk on the table with his fingers, and said, "Since they are short of money, we will continue this business. These silks are very profitable in our country of Jin, and there is also tea, so find someone to take care of it. This one needs to be clever and smart, not only to be able to do business, but also to be able to listen to news." Pai Tuzi agreed and left. Wooly opened the silk on the table and said to himself, "I hope you 2 friends don't let me down." At this time, Fan Zijin was also arranging manpower. "Your team is responsible for monitoring them. Remember, you must monitor them every time they come, at least not let them go to the south through Hanshong Mansion." When Chi Heiran saw that Yanmo led them away, he asked, "It's so troublesome, why do you have to do business with them? Haven't you already connected with several businessmen in Jingzhou Mansion?" "What's the same?" Fan Zijin said, "do they dare to sell us the golden horse and the golden sword?" Chi Heiran's eyes lit up, "The one surnamed Wu dares to sell." Fan Zijin looked at him confidently. Chi Heiran patted the table and said, "Okay, you must catch him, and I will open the door for you to do whatever business you do in the future." Fan Zijin rolled his eyes and said, "You also have a share in this business, don't leave yourself so clean." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 270. After Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng sold out the rabbit skins, they found the cart and put it down in an alley, and ran after Mu Shi and the others hand in hand. Seeing all kinds of snacks on the stalls, Ziyuheng drooled, pointed to a stall selling mutton skewers and said, "Cousin, I want to eat." "Come on, I'll buy it for you." Mu Yangling pulled her to squeeze in, and said to the vendor, "Give us 20 skewers." Ziyuheng tugged at her sleeve and said in a low voice, "I can't eat so much." "I can eat." The hawker has quickly put 20 skewers of mutton skewers on the grill, lest they go back on their word. The kebabs in this era lack a lot of ingredients, but the sheep here are raised on the grasslands, and they don't smell bad. You just need to spread some small ingredients and roast them to eat. The strong mutton flavor is not like the later generations. You can taste the barbecue flavor of chili and cumin. Looking at the sizzling mutton, Mu Yangling couldn't help drooling, pointing out from time to time, "Don't overcook it, it's only half done." The peddler laughed and said, "Girl is a master at eating mutton. This is the first time I set up a stall. Don't blame me if I don't do well. It's not strange, it's not strange, I think you can turn over very quickly." Mu Yangling looked up at him, saw that he was a standard Han, and asked with a smile, "Is this sheep raised by us? Our people in Dazhu it is rare to raise this kind of sheep." The peddler smiled wryly, "We didn't want to raise it, but we were forced to do so. Before, the barbarians didn't allow us to farm, but they insisted on raising sheep and cattle. The cattle are not farmable cattle, and we don't drink the milk from them. Yeah, and cows are also expensive, so we had no choice but to raise sheep, and before we had time to slaughter them, Dejo called us back." "Is it okay to call back?" Ziyuheng asked. "Okay, why not? First, we are exempted from the tax we have to pay in winter this year. Second, we can keep all the sheep. The most important thing is that next year we can pull out all the grass in the field and continue farming. It's just that people in the south of Hanshong Mansion are not used to eating mutton. We have too much mutton here, so we can't sell it. No, during the temple fair, I will set up a stall to sell some mutton skewers, and I can make some money." "Some?" Mu Yangling looked at the fresh mutton hanging beside him, and drooled, "You can't even sell such good mutton? What a waste of money." Zai Yuheng's heart moved. She tugged on Mu Yangling's sleeve, and said in a low voice, "Cousin, do you think it's because the little generals are still blocking the city gate, so they can't sell it? Why don't we buy it and sell it back, Bar? If you eat mutton in winter, as long as you are willing to go south, you will definitely be able to sell it." Mu Yangling touched his chin, and also lowered his voice, "But we only have more than 100 taels of silver, how many can we buy? Even if you add the ones at home are only more than 600 taels of silver. But I don't mind the size of the business, we'll take a look after visiting the temple fair." While they were talking, the peddler also cooked the mutton skewers. Mu Yangling gave him the money, and walked forward while eating with Zai Yuheng. One hand came towards her chest. Mu Yangling lightly after a light pat, the man screamed, covered his hands and looked at her with a pale face. Mu Yangling showed his white teeth at him, and said, "I am a hunter." The man covered his hands and turned around and ran away. Mu Yangling snorted coldly and didn't go after him. Zai Yuheng realized that they were almost robbed just now, and said indignantly, "Cousin, why didn't you catch him and send him to the official?" "I would like to, but I don't want to fight right now," she said as she motioned to look at the corner of the street, where there was a group of people standing there. The oldest was in her 30s, and the youngest CAI was 12 or 13 years old. All of them stared unkindly Mu Yangling. They thought they had picked up a soft persimmon, but they kicked an iron board instead. After the leader gave Mu Yangling a hard look, he waved and said, "Let's go, change places." Mu Yangling saw them leaving, so he dragged Zai Yuheng to continue walking, and they saw their family members on the way. Mu Shi hugged the twins who kept turning around and said, "I was going back to find you, it's lunchtime, let's find a place to eat." Shu Wanyang asked, "How are the leather goods selling?" "It's all sold." Mu Yangling walked forward holding Zai Ulan with one hand and Bowen with the other, and the two children let go of Shu Wanyang's clothes. There were so many people, and they were afraid of getting lost. The family found a decent restaurant and went up to the second floor. Bowen said excitedly, "Sister, they said that there will be a lantern festival here tomorrow night. Let's come and see it." Mu Yangling patted his head and agreed, "Okay, I'll take you out when the time comes. It's easy to get lost in such a lively place, and there are also flower lovers, so it's better to stay in the mansion." Mu Yangling, "What are you afraid of? Let Chi Heiran send us a few guards and follow them every step of the way. Nothing will happen." "What are you doing with you?" Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin, who came all the way, just heard the last sentence. Mu Yangling told the blog post that he wanted to see the Lantern Festival. Chi Heiran said indifferently, "I will come out when the time comes, let's just go together." When Mu Shi saw Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin approaching, he quickly got up and gave up his seat to them. Fan Zijin smiled and said, "Don't get up, Uncle Mu, we just sit at the bottom." Seeing that it was crowded, Mu Yangling said, "Let's have 2 tables, one is too crowded." Zai Yuheng and the others couldn't wish more. Eating with adults is always a bit restrained, it's much more comfortable for them to eat by themselves. Mu Yangling immediately got up and occupied a table next door, and waved to Xiao Er, who was about to open his mouth to object. "One more meal according to the table just now." Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin said, "What else do you want to eat?" Point. "I poured a pot of tea just now, and now I'm starving to death, so I need to order more food." Hearing this, Xiao Er immediately went forward to report the names of the dishes happily, and then told the dishes that Mu Yangling and the others ordered just now. Chi Heiran added 2 dishes, and Fan Zijin also added 2. There are a lot of dishes, piled up on the table. But they insisted on eating clean, and when the waiter came up to pay the bill, he couldn't help but click his tongue. Fan Zijin looked at Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling, and felt that with these 2 people around, he would no longer be afraid of wasting food when he went out to order food. He signaled Yanmo to pay the bill, but Mushi had already done it first. He hugged the two sleepy little guys in his arms, and said to Chihayran and Fan Zijan, "Little General, Mr. Fan, my wife, and I will take care of the children first. Go back to sleep, go and play by yourself." Looking at Mu Yangling again, he instructed, "Take care of your younger brothers and sisters." Bowen and Xiaolan cheered in a low voice. They could have more fun without adults restraining them. Mu Yangling responded, Chihayran and Fan Zijan had quite a few guards. Mu Yangling only had to watch them from a distance, and had guards to watch over the children. Seeing that Ziyuheng was also eager to try, she patted her on the shoulder and said, "Go and play with Bowen Xiaolan, Brother Hayran and I have something to talk about." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 271. Chihayran happily heard Mu Yangling calling his brother, and just about to ask her to call him a few more words, Mu Yangling had already turned his head to talk to Fan Zijan. She told Fan Zijan about the merchants. She didn't say that Chen Guanqi deliberately blocked the merchants from going north, but said that there were several merchants who wanted to buy goods and sell them south. With Fan Zijan's shrewdness, she would definitely be able to ask about this after meeting them, so why should she be that villain? Fan Zijan was in a good mood when he heard that a merchant came to ask about the diced rabbit meat. He never saw anyone coming to his door. He thought that the business of the diced rabbit meat could only be done by themselves. This is his first business, even if it is not the one that makes the most money now, he is still very concerned about it. He originally planned to expand the workshop and build another workshop in Hanshong Mansion, so as to produce more diced rabbit meat, and then sell it to merchants from the south, so that he can save a lot of cost. But he has never seen anyone come to ask. He thought that the diced rabbit meat had just come out, and the profit had not yet driven those businessmen to come to the door. Now it seems that the timing is just wrong. And when Fan Zijan was Chen Guanqi playing tricks behind him, he almost lost his breath, but at this time, Chen Guanqi was still in the south, and he couldn't find a partner if he wanted to get angry. Mu Yangling, after playing to his heart's content for 2 days, borrowed 400 taels of silver from Fan Zijan, and together with his own 100 taels, went to the previous peddler who sold mutton skewers to discuss buying sheep with him. 1 tael and 5 coins ahead, I can pick whatever I want, what do you think? The peddler said with a bitter face, but girl, this sheep can usually be sold for 2 taels of silver, so it is too cruel for you to directly suppress half of the silver. Mu Yangling smiled and said, the sheep you raise are not as good as those raised by the Hu people. The price you mentioned is from the past. Now Hanshong Mansion can buy a sheep for a tael of silver. After I buy it, I have to go south. It's a lot of money to sell it for 1, 2, or 5. The peddler was silent, and asked after a while, how many heads did the girl buy? 300. The peddler's eyes lit up, and as a result, most of the sheep in their village went away. Mu Yangling said, I'll give you a price of $1 or $2.50. You help me organize it and let me choose it. As for how much you give them, it's up to you, but there is one thing, the worst sheep can't be worse than that. Head. Mu Yangling pointed to a sheep tied at the back of his stall. The peddler weighed it up, then nodded and said, don't worry, girl, I can fix it for you. When will you get it? Tomorrow afternoon. It's too urgent. Mu Yangling, I'll leave early the morning after tomorrow. The peddler could only agree, and he was not in the mood to set up a stall anymore, so he packed his things and went home to discuss with the villagers. Mu Shi and Xu Wanyang have always held a laissez-faire attitude towards their daughter's foundation. No matter what she does, they have no objection. But my aunt has always been very conservative. Knowing that Mu Yangling took out most of the family's savings at once, although she deliberately opposed it, she was discouraged when she thought of the past results, and felt that they should still go. It's just that when she knew that Ziyuheng was the one who encouraged her, she twisted her ears and said, "Your cousin is already courageous enough, but if you add more fire, this family business won't be ruined by the two of you in the future." Ziyuheng said in disbelief, "Grandma, the family business is a result of tossing around. Don't worry, you won't lose money. Even if you can't sell it, we will raise these sheep and sell one of them in the market every day." Fart, how long will it take to sell one of the 300 sheep a day? And this sheep will not eat grass. It won't grow old. The current mutton is okay. If you keep it for a few more months, you can see who else will eat it. Although she was skeptical, the aunt still actively gave them things to prepare for going out. This time, Mu Yangling took Ziyuheng and Bowen out. Her reason was that the two of them were not young and should go out to see the world. At home, Mu Yangling asked Chi Heiran to take care of her. She stuffed the used clothes into the bag and said to Shu Wanyang, "Mother, don't worry, I will take good care of Ziyuheng and Bowen. Now, you and your aunt are also resting, and it is estimated that Dad will come back soon. Then how long will it take you to come back?" "I will definitely come back before the Chinese New Year." "There is still more than a month before the Chinese New Year," Shu Wanyang asked hesitantly, "does it have to take that long? Let's go all the way to Xinyuan Mansion. If we arrive at Xinyuan Mansion and it's not sold out, we'll walk east along Xinyuan Mansion. Don't worry, your daughter won't suffer. Restrain your temper outside. Although you are powerful, you can't beat your fists with four legs, not to mention you still have Ziyuheng and Bowen." Shu Wanyang urged carefully, and finally said, "Even if you can't sell it in the end, you can't sell it, it's nothing, pull it back and we'll figure out a solution slowly, don't get angry." Mu Yangling responded with a full mouth. She spread the quilt on the carriage, and took the things she packed up one by one. This carriage was bought for her Heijun in Hanshong Mansion, although it is not easy to use the Heijun to pull the cart. Overqualified, but there is no way, who let their family now have a black horse? Mu Yangling looked at the somewhat reluctant Heijun, and thought that it would be best to buy a donkey or mule when she came back. 1 or 2 times would be fine, her Heijun couldn't always pull a cart. Mu Yangling touched its neck and comforted him, "I'll find you a companion when I get back, don't be angry, let's go out and relax." Heijun touched Mu Yangling's head with his head affectionately, and then reluctantly went to pull the carriage. Bowen and Ziyuheng climbed into the carriage and waved goodbye to their family excitedly. "Auntie, Mother, let's go." Ziyuheng was also promising her younger sister, "I'll buy you beautiful embroidery thread." Mu Yangling drove out the flock of sheep, 300 sheep, and tied 10 sheep together with a rope, so that the sheep could not escape even if they ran, and the head sheep led the way. Ziyuheng and Bowen sat alone on the side of the carriage, and Heijun could keep up with Mu Yangling in front of him without rushing. When he got on the road, Mu Yangling didn't have to chase the sheep. He also sat in the carriage. "Just watch that the sheep don't get lost." Ziyuheng looked around and saw that the leaves on the trees on both sides had all fallen. She was a little bored. "Cousin, where do we sleep at night?" "Wild camp." Mu Yangling had already determined the route before departure, and at their current speed, they could only sleep in the wild at night. It was Bowen and Ziyuheng's first time camping in the wild, so excited, they asked, "Will there be wolves?" "Looking at luck, I don't think our luck is so bad." The two let out an "oh" in disappointment. Mu Yangling looked at the two brats and ground his teeth. There was a fork in the road ahead, and the leading sheep walked straight ahead without knowing how to turn south. Mu Yangling jumped out of the carriage and drove through the flock of sheep to drive the leading sheep, which made the orderly flock confused. After turning the head of the sheepboard in the right direction, the sheep behind were in a commotion before restoring order. Ziyuheng sighed and said, "Fortunately, we are the only ones on this road, otherwise people must have objections. Their sheep took up the entire road. The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 272. Chapter 272, Sale. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Mu Yangling included the journey from Hanzhong Prefecture to Xingzhou Prefecture. If they walked on foot, wouldn't they have to walk for 2 days? The boss fell silent. Ziyuheng encouraged him from the side. Boss, what are you hesitating for? We're selling you live sheep. As long as there's grass, you can raise them and slaughter them when you need to cook it. The price is much cheaper than the ones you buy from butchers. Seeing that the boss was tempted, Bowen tugged at Mu Yangling's sleeve. Sister, why don't we find a butcher, sell it to him for 40 copper coins per catty? If he sells it for 50 copper coins, he can earn 10 copper coins per catty. The boss immediately asked, Miss, how many sheep do you have? How many do you want? After weighing the pros and cons, the boss said, 6, all alive. As for whether we're going by weight or the number of sheep, I'll have to take a look before deciding. Sure. The boss continued, you can only sell your sheep to our mutton restaurant. Mu Yangling smiled. That goes without saying. Only then was the boss satisfied. I'll deliver them before the sun sets. After saying that, Mu Yangling picked up 2 sheep and was about to leave. Seeing this, the boss quickly stopped her. Leave these 2 sheep here, just bring 4 more sheep. That won't do, I still have to find other buyers. The boss said unhappily, you clearly said that you would only sell it to my mutton restaurant. I said that I'll only sell it to your mutton restaurant. However, there's still the largest eatery, the largest restaurant, and the largest butcher in Three Springs County. The boss was dumbfounded. So Mu Yangling was only exclusively selling to one of each type? However, he couldn't find any fault with that reasoning. Thinking that although there was competition between them, it was much less than that of other mutton restaurants, he didn't stop Mu Yangling anymore. He watched as the 3 of them disappeared and sighed. Each generation is better than the last. To think they dare to come out and do business at such a young age. I must admit I'm getting old. Just like that, Mu Yangling went to the largest restaurant and eatery. Then, she ran back to the butcher from before. She received an order of 34 sheep collectively, which made a total of 40 sheep when including the 6 from that first mutton restaurant. Mu Yangling did not have to spend long negotiating with them, half an hour at most for each. However, it still took her quite a long time after adding the time up among the various buyers. Ziyuheng took the money to buy a few buns to fill everyone's stomachs. Mu Yangling left the 2 sheep at the butcher's and took the 3 taels of deposit he had given her. As she ate the buns, she went back to herd the sheep over. Of the 40 sheep, Mu Yangling chose 38 from inside the fence. These 38 were less energetic than the others, and they varied in size. Mu Yangling used a rope to split them into 3 groups and started herding them forward. Mu Yangling was in a hurry, afraid that she would not be able to return to her rented place before the sun set. So, she stuffed another 100 copper coins into the landlord's hands and asked them to watch over the sheep for a longer time. The landlord was overjoyed. He had earned more money today than he had in 2 months, so he agreed happily. In fact, he even hoped that Mu Yangling and the others would come back as late as possible. This way, they might be able to get an additional reward tomorrow. He could also tell that although Mu Yangling and the others were not dressed well and had come out to make a living at such a young age, they were even more generous than those merchants. The 3 of them herded the sheep into the city. Not long after, Mu Yangling was way ahead of Bowen and Ziyuheng. Worried that they wouldn't be able to leave the city at night, Ziyuheng shouted, "Cousin, you can leave first, we'll walk slowly." Mu Yangling waved at them and herded her 10 sheep away. Tied together, the 10 sheep were quite well behaved after entering the city. Mu Yangling carefully herded them to the entrance of the mutton restaurant and wiped the sweat off her forehead. Finally, here I was afraid that I would bump into something on the way. When the boss heard this, he came out and saw the 10 tied sheep. Smiling, he said, "Miss, since you can rush here from Hanzhong Prefecture, why are you afraid of entering the city? He walked around the 10 sheep and chose 6 that looked fatter. He asked casually, Miss, how many sheep did you herd over this time? There's not much left. We stopped for a day each at Xingzhou Prefecture and Mingshui County. Mu Yangling kicked a sheep in the middle and said, Boss, this one is not bad, it's energetic. Seeing that she did not answer the exact number, the boss did not ask further. He looked at the one Mu Yangling had chosen and thought for a moment before replacing it. He said, all right, I'll take these 6. Mu Yangling untied the rope and pulled out the 6 for him. She asked, do you want to go by number of sheep or weight? The boss chose all the fat and strong ones, so he naturally chose to go by number of sheep. He paid Mu Yangling 18 taels of silver happily. Mu Yangling appeared a little indignant, but she still held the remaining 4 sheep and turned to leave. Seeing that she had left, the boss rubbed his hands and said, I've made a killing this time. Mu Yangling went to the eatery next. When she saw Bowen and Ziyuheng there, she asked, did the journey go smoothly? Ziyuheng nodded. Since there were fewer people on the streets, I didn't bump into anything. The next 3 buyers also chose their sheep. Some chose to pay according to the number of sheep, while others chose to pay by weight. However, even when paying by weight, they were weighed raw. A large part of the reason why they bought Mu Yangling's sheep was that her sheep were alive and could be kept. In the end, Mu Yangling received 124 taels of silver. The sun was about to set. Having fulfilled her end of the agreement, Mu Yangling was in a good mood. She waved at the 2 children and said, let's go to the restaurant today and have a good meal. Ziyuheng said excitedly, cousin, let's charge them according to weight in catties and not by number of sheep next time, it's more profitable that way. Smiling, Mu Yangling said, you win some, you lose some, we have a lot more time now, right? All right, let's go eat first. After dinner, I'll go buy some grass tomorrow. We'll still stay in Three Springs County for a day and only reach Xinyuan Prefecture the day after tomorrow. We can't let the sheep starve. Didn't you say we'd only stay for a day? Didn't you see that when we went to the eatery and restaurant to deliver the sheep just now, many people in gorgeous clothes looked at us? I just asked the assistant of the eatery and found out that many of the squires in Three Springs County like to eat mutton, especially hot-boiled mutton. Tomorrow, we can go visit them. We might be able to sell them some. Considering there are still so many sheep left, we can't place all our hopes on Xinyuan Prefecture. Since they saw it, why didn't they come over and ask if they were interested? Sister, asking the landlord to help look after the sheep is too expensive. With a smile, Mu Yangling said, they naturally won't take the initiative to mention it to us because of their status. However, if there's really a family that likes to eat very much, someone will probably come looking for us tomorrow. Mu Yangling was right. The next morning, someone really came knocking on her door. It was landlord Bai, who lived in the north of the city. His mother loved mutton, and in a few days, his mother was hosting a banquet. Many young ladies and daughters-in-law in the city would go to his house for a meal, and he would drink and chat with a group of men in the front yard. Since the weather these days was so cold, the old lady suggested eating hot pot. How could there be no mutton when eating hot pot? Thus, he asked his steward to go out and look for Mu Yangling for some fresh grassland mutton. As Mu Yangling did not hide her whereabouts yesterday, they could easily find her by asking around.